Am I the asshole for leaving my ex-fiancé after he left me in the Cayman Islands on vacation? My ex-fiancé and I were together for just under 3 years. Looking back, those years were a whirlwind of compromises, sacrifices, and a whole lot of lessons I wish I didn't have to learn the hard way. When we first met, he was in a tough spot, homeless, with twin kids, and no real plan for getting back on his feet. At the time, I was living in a small one-bedroom apartment. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Despite knowing how difficult it would be, I let him move in. I rearranged my entire life, cramming his things into my limited space, shifting furniture to create a makeshift sleeping area for his kids, and stepping into a motherly role I wasn't even remotely prepared for. I cooked, cleaned, and took care of his kids more than he ever did. It wasn't just the physical labor that wore me down, though, it was the emotional toll. I tried to be patient and understanding because I knew he was going through a lot, but he had this intense jealousy that hovered over our relationship like a storm cloud. I never gave him a reason to doubt me, but I think his insecurities were tied to his past infidelities, and he was projecting all that baggage onto me. One particular incident still sticks in my mind. We were watching Spider-Man 2, and during a scene with Jamie Foxx, I casually mentioned that he looked great for his age. That was it, a simple, offhand comment. You'd think I'd confessed to an affair with the guy the way my fiancé reacted. He spiraled into a fit of rage, accusing me of being disrespectful and unfaithful. The next day, while I was at work, he packed up everything, his belongings, his kids' belongings, and even things I'd bought for them, and moved out without saying a word. My friends still call it the Jamie Foxx debacle, as if naming it makes it less ridiculous. After some time apart, we managed to patch things up, though in hindsight, I should have let it end there. We stayed together for another 2 years, during which he proposed. I said yes, partly because I wanted to believe in the future we'd dreamed of building together. Shortly after the proposal, I found out I was pregnant. For a brief moment, it felt like everything was falling into place. We were thrilled, especially since we were expecting a little girl. But in my second trimester, I had a miscarriage. The grief was suffocating. It felt like the world had stopped, and all I could do was mourn the loss of the life we'd been so excited to welcome. While I was still grieving, he dropped a comment that shattered me. It's not hard for me because I already have a son and daughter. I don't think I'll ever forget how casually he said it, as if our baby girl was just some abstract concept he'd never truly connected with. It felt like he was invalidating my pain, brushing off the loss like it was nothing. A month later, we went on a family trip to the Cayman Islands for my parents' 25th wedding anniversary. My parents, being the generous people they are, covered almost everything: flights, accommodations, groceries. All we had to handle were the extras, like excursions and drinks. On the third day of the trip, completely out of the blue, he accused me of cheating on him while I was pregnant. I was so stunned, I didn't even know how to respond. And then the next day happened, which somehow managed to be even worse. We went snorkeling with my family, but we had to cut it short to take my mom back to the house because she had a migraine. That left me, my fiancé, my sisters, and my sister's boyfriend. While most of us swam, the guys sat at the bar having a few drinks. When we regrouped, he started complaining loudly about how he couldn't even afford a haircut, which was ridiculous given his recent promotion to $85,000 a year. Trying to lighten the mood, I teased him and said, "It's not like you can't afford it, you just like my haircuts better." What followed was a full-blown meltdown. He yelled at me in front of everyone, stormed off, and disappeared for what felt like an eternity. When we eventually found him, he drove us back to the Airbnb like a lunatic, speeding and swerving. Everyone in the car, including my 15-year-old sister, was terrified. Back at the house, his tantrum continued, slamming doors, shouting, and even lashing out at my parents, who had paid for the entire trip. I begged everyone to calm down, but the tension was unbearable. That night, without warning, he booked a $700 last-minute plane ticket and left. Yes, the same man who had just complained about not being able to afford a haircut somehow scraped together the money for an impulsive flight home. He didn't tell anyone he was leaving, just disappeared into the night. When we got back, I tried once again to salvage the relationship. I wanted so badly for things to work out, not just for me, but for the kids, who I'd grown to love like they were my own. But the truth was staring me in the face. This wasn't a partnership. It was me constantly bending over backward for someone who gave very little in return. Eventually, I realized I had to walk away. I weaned myself off his kids, slowly stepping back so he'd have to take responsibility for them again. So, Reddit. Am I the asshole for leaving him? I gave everything to this relationship, my time, my energy, my emotional well-being. I wanted a future with him, but at what cost? Was it wrong to finally put myself first? Update 1 week later. It's been a week since my original post, and things have been a lot. After the breakup, I packed what I could and moved in temporarily with my best friend. She's been my rock through all of this, giving me space to process everything while also making sure I eat, sleep, and don't spiral. Honestly, her support has been a lifesaver, but even in her cozy apartment, I can't shake the feeling of looking over my shoulder. Here's why. My ex-fiancé has been reaching out. At first, it was the usual, text messages filled with apologies, pleas to talk, and promises to change. I expected that. But then things started to escalate. He began showing up unannounced, first at my workplace and later at my friend's apartment. Imagine my shock when I looked out the window and saw his car parked down the street, just idling there. It sent chills down my spine. He hasn't done anything outright threatening yet, but the uninvited appearances are unsettling. I've made it clear that I need space and time, but he doesn't seem to understand, or maybe he just doesn't care. Each time he shows up, it feels like a test of my boundaries, like he's daring me to confront him. My friend has been a champ through all of this. She offered to talk to him herself or even call the police, but I'm hesitant. I keep telling myself he's not dangerous, just desperate. But how do you draw the line between desperation and obsession? I've started documenting everything: texts, times he's shown up, and any other odd behavior. A mutual friend suggested I do this just in case things escalate further. It feels surreal to even think about needing evidence against someone I once loved, but here we are. Now I'm stuck with a decision. Part of me wonders if I should agree to meet him, just to put everything to rest and set some firm boundaries in person. Maybe that would stop the constant messages and surprise visits. On the other hand, what if meeting him gives him the wrong idea? What if he sees it as an opportunity to manipulate me back into the relationship? The thought of sitting across from him, trying to explain again why I had to leave, makes my stomach turn. I've also considered taking legal action, like filing for a restraining order. But is that too extreme? I keep second-guessing myself, worrying I'll look like I'm overreacting. Then again, am I underreacting by not doing anything? For now, I'm keeping a low profile. No social media posts, no routine patterns he could track. But I can't keep living like this forever, can I? Every time my phone buzzes, I feel a pang of anxiety. Every knock at the door makes my heart race. I don't want to live in fear, but I also don't want to provoke him into something worse. Reddit, what would you do? Should I meet him and try to get closure, or is it time to take more serious steps to protect myself? Update 2, 3 weeks later. After much deliberation, I decided to meet my ex-fiancé in a public cafe. I figured it was the safest option. Lots of people around, neutral ground, and a way to finally address everything without the looming anxiety of him showing up uninvited. He had been persistent in his messages, apologizing repeatedly and saying he just wanted to talk things out. A part of me hoped this meeting might bring some closure, or at the very least, establish boundaries going forward. When we sat down, he started off calm. He apologized for his behavior, both during our relationship and in the weeks following the breakup. He talked about how he wanted to make amends and hoped we could find a way to rebuild what we had. For a moment, it felt like maybe this was progress. But the moment I told him I needed more time to think and sort through my feelings, his demeanor shifted. His voice got sharper, his gestures more erratic. He accused me of wasting his time and claimed I was playing games by even agreeing to meet if I was not ready to reconcile. I stayed as calm as I could, trying to explain that I was there to communicate honestly, not to promise anything I could not commit to. But he would not have it. And then, out of nowhere, he said something that chilled me to my core. He told me that if I did not take him back, he might as well hurt himself because, according to him, there is nothing left without us. It was a threat disguised as despair, and it was terrifying. My hands shook as I tried to de-escalate, telling him he should seek professional help and that I could not be responsible for his choices. His anger flared up again, and for a moment I thought he might cause a scene right there in the cafe. I knew I had to leave. I made an excuse, grabbed my bag, and walked out as quickly as I could without drawing too much attention. My heart was pounding the entire way back to my friend's apartment. I kept looking over my shoulder, half expecting to see him following me. Now, I am trying to process what happened and figure out my next steps. His words keep replaying in my head, and I cannot shake the fear that he might actually follow through on his threats, whether to hurt himself or escalate his behavior toward me. I am not equipped to handle this alone, so I am considering reaching out to a counselor or therapist for guidance. I am also looking into what my legal options might be if this continues. Reddit, what would you do in this situation? Is it time to involve the authorities, or is there a way to handle this more privately? I feel like I am walking a tightrope, trying to protect myself while also not wanting to provoke him further, but I cannot live like this much longer. Update 3, 2 months later. It's been 2 months since I last updated, and I honestly never thought things would escalate this far. After a lot of thinking and consulting with professionals, I made the decision to not go back to my ex-fiancé. I knew deep down it was the right choice for me, but I also knew it would come with its own set of challenges. I couldn't keep living in fear, hoping he would just stop showing up or sending more emotional blackmail my way. The relationship had run its course, and no matter how hard it was, I had to close the door for good. I decided to break the news to him through email. I thought it would be the safest and most straightforward way. No chance for him to manipulate me in person or twist my words. I kept it simple. I told him that I had made up my mind and that I needed space to move on. I also made it clear that there was no room for negotiation. I wasn't interested in continuing a relationship, and I didn't want to discuss it any further. Of course, that didn't go over well. Within hours of sending the email, he started bombarding me with messages. At first, they were just the usual, why are you doing this, and you're making a mistake, we can fix this. But then it got darker. He started threatening me, saying that if I didn't change my decision, he would expose some personal secrets to my family and friends. He didn't go into detail about what secrets, but the implication was clear. He was trying to control me with fear and guilt. I was shaken, to say the least. It felt like I was trapped all over again. The messages kept coming, each one more aggressive than the last, pushing me to reconsider. At one point, he even tried to guilt trip me by saying, "You're the one who said you wanted a family with me. You're throwing that all away for nothing." As if any of that mattered now. It was clear he wasn't interested in my well-being. He just didn't want to lose control. That's when I knew I had to take stronger action. I started researching legal options, and I'm currently in the process of seeking legal advice to explore my rights and options. I've been documenting everything, every message, every threat, and any unusual behavior. I'm working with a lawyer now to figure out what steps I can take to protect myself. I'm considering getting a restraining order if he continues to escalate, though part of me still hesitates. I don't want to seem like I'm overreacting, but the fear is real, and I don't want to wait until it's too late to take action. I've also had to make some changes in my life to regain a sense of control. I've changed my phone number and locked down my social media accounts even more. My friends and family have been incredibly supportive, but it's hard not to feel paranoid when everything in my life is now being monitored. I don't want to live like this, but I also don't want to be caught off guard if something happens. To be honest, I'm exhausted. This whole ordeal has drained me emotionally and mentally. I feel like I'm constantly looking over my shoulder, worrying about what he might do next. The person I once trusted has become a source of fear, and I'm struggling to process how everything changed so quickly. Right now, I'm just trying to stay focused on my own healing and well-being. I've started seeing a therapist to help work through the emotional weight of this situation. The fear, the anxiety, the guilt, it's all a lot to handle on my own. And even though I'm doing everything I can to protect myself, I still wonder, what's next? How far will he go? Reddit, I could really use some advice here. Have any of you been through something similar? What steps did you take to protect yourself? How do you stop someone from using your past to manipulate you? I don't want to keep living in fear, but it's hard to know where to draw the line between setting boundaries and just trying to survive. Update 4, 3 months later. It's been 3 months since my last update, and things have settled into a new kind of normal. With the support of my family, friends, and legal advisors, I've been able to take real steps toward protecting myself. I changed my phone number and email address, simple but necessary actions that have given me a sense of control over my life again. I also informed my workplace about the situation. They've been understanding and assured me that they will support me if anything comes up, whether it's dealing with unwanted contact or making sure I feel safe on the job. I've started to focus more on my recovery. I've been engaging in new activities that make me feel grounded and give me a sense of purpose again. I've joined a local yoga class, started volunteering at an animal shelter, and have reconnected with some old friends. These little things are slowly rebuilding my sense of self that was lost during the chaos of the past couple of years. There are still moments where I catch myself feeling anxious, especially when I hear a car engine outside or get an unfamiliar number calling me. But those moments are getting fewer and farther between, and I'm learning how to manage the fear that still lingers. The legal process has been a slow grind, but I'm starting to feel like I'm taking real control over the situation. My lawyer helped me file for a restraining order just to be safe. The paperwork was a hassle, but knowing that I have legal protection now gives me a sense of relief. My ex-fiancé hasn't tried to contact me directly since I took those steps, and while I'm not completely relaxed, I do feel more secure. The fact that there's an official record now makes me feel like I've done everything I can to make sure I'm not just relying on hope. A few weeks ago, I did receive a letter in the mail from him. It was long, full of the same manipulation and empty promises, but it also included more threats, this time suggesting he might try to involve my family in ways that could cause harm. But it's been easier to handle with the support of my lawyer. I didn't respond, and I don't plan to. I've learned that silence is one of the most powerful things I can give in this situation. My response is to not engage. What's been the most difficult part of all this is the lingering guilt. I'm still battling with moments where I feel like maybe I should have tried harder or that I should have stuck it out for the sake of his kids. But every time I remind myself of how unhealthy the relationship had become, how I lost pieces of myself in trying to make it work, I know that I made the right decision. I can't keep sacrificing my peace and my well-being for someone who couldn't respect me or treat me with the kindness and care I deserve. Looking back, I can see the slow buildup of red flags that I ignored and how those red flags turned into something dangerous. But I've also learned a lot about myself through this process. I've learned how to set boundaries, how to ask for help when I need it, and how to trust myself again. It's been painful, but also empowering. I'm still far from where I want to be, but I'm proud of how far I've come. I've been able to rebuild parts of my life that I thought were lost. I'm rediscovering who I am outside of that toxic relationship, and I'm slowly starting to feel like myself again. Thank you all for the support and for sharing your own experiences with me. It's been incredibly helpful to hear from so many of you who've been through similar situations. Your words have been a constant reminder that I'm not alone in this and that I have the strength to keep moving forward. I'll keep you all updated on how things progress. But for now, I'm focusing on my own healing and the life I'm building after leaving that chapter behind. I'm doing my best to stay strong one step at a time.